Support Name Explain on Patreon for ad-free videos, exclusive podcasts and blog posts, and to help choose what names get explained. Click the link in the description. The island nation of Tonga lies in the southern Pacific Ocean, just north of New Zealand. It is an archipelago made up of around 170 islands, with just 39 of those being permanently inhabited by us humans. The nation is thought to have a population of just over 100,000 people. Tonga has some other pretty unique features under its belt too, like it being the last remaining monarchy across all of Polynesia, and the fact that it is the only island nation to never be formally colonized. Though from 1900 to 1970 it was a protected state of the United Kingdom. And famously, due to the immense popularity of Christianity on the island, it is actually illegal to do certain things on a Sunday, including things like conduct certain businesses, play sports, and even certain chores are not allowed. The day is instead reserved more for rest, eating, and spending time with family. Tonga is without a doubt a seriously interesting nation tucked away towards the bottom of our planet. Though of course at the time of this video going live, that being the 26th of January 2022 for anyone who has stumbled upon this video in the future, this small island nation has been facing the aftermath of what scientists are already calling the largest volcanic eruption of the 21st century. On the 14th of July 2022, the submarine volcano of Tonga Hapai, named after the two islands it is formed between, started to erupt, sending plumes of ash and smoke into the sky. This huge eruption also led to tsunamis affecting nations as far as New Zealand, Japan, the USA, Russia, Chile, and Peru. This volcano, however, is just 40 miles north of the main island of Tonga, so it's this small nation that has been worse affected by all of this. There have been multiple people reported dead, injured, and missing, with that number likely to rise, and images of the destruction this volcano has caused are starting to surface. This was a huge eruption, with some claiming it was 500 times more powerful than the atomic bomb that landed on Hiroshima, and the smoke is thought to have reached halfway into space. It would be careless for me to financially gain from this nation's history while it is going through such a crisis and not even mention how we can help these people out. Various charities have set up appeals to help these people, including the likes of CARE, Red Cross, Save the Children, and UNICEF. There will be links to these charities down below, so if you can, please do consider donating. Thank you very much. Though, what about that name of Tonga? I imagine to many of us the name Tonga is quintessentially and definitively Polynesian. When many of us from outside the area think of Polynesia, this exotic sounding name must come to mind. So of course it is a name of Polynesian roots, more specifically from the Tongan language. While Tongan is its own language, the word of Tonga kind of appears across multiple Polynesian languages. This is in the form of the word Whakatonga, which means southwards. Tonga had this direction-based word made its name due to the fact that the Tongan archipelago are the southernmost islands of central Polynesia. So despite Tonga having an exotic sounding name for those of us who do not speak the language, it is actually a relatively straightforward one. This name also means that it's one of the many nations on our planet to have a name deriving from a cardinal direction, meaning it gets to join the likes of South Africa, Norway, North and South Korea, and the Central African Republic with their cardinal based names too. That aside, I think we can all agree that Tonga is a suitably Polynesian name for this suitably Polynesian nation. And thankfully, this nation is littered with wonderfully Polynesian names. From the names of its many islands and their groups, including the likes of Tonga Tapu, Ha'apai, Varau, Toku, and Neotopu-Atupu, to the nation's capital of Nuku'alofa. Looking at any map of this nation reveals even more wonderful Tongan names. Also, apologies for pronunciation there. I did try and research how to say some of those names, but I'm still most likely slipped up on a few. Though regardless, these are wonderfully Tongan names. However, like so much of Polynesia, these islands have a past steeped in colonization and interference from foreign powers, though as mentioned the nation was never formally colonized. However, with foreign powers, as we've seen so often on Name Explain, comes foreign names. This has led to Tonga having a few other names in its past. Tonga is believed to have been initially settled around 3,000 years ago by ancestors of the Lapita people. These Lapita people are believed to have initially come from parts of East Asia like Taiwan. They lived in isolation, creating their own language and culture. This development would go undisturbed until the 17th century. It was in this century that the Dutch first came across this island, in 1616 to be exact. It was not until a few decades later that Dutch names got applied to them. It was in 1643 that Dutch explorer Abel Tasman first arrived on these islands and gave them suitably Dutch names. Tasman named the Tongan islands of Ill and Tonga Tapu, Middelburg and Amsterdam respectively. These are of course also both names of cities in the Netherlands. However, the reason Tonga Tapu was named after Amsterdam specifically was because it was abundant with supplies for him and his men, much like Amsterdam itself was. These names today, however, aren't in any official usage. Another name concocted by Tasman has had a bit more staying power, however, that being the name of New Zealand, named after the Dutch province of Zeeland. And of course the island of Tasmania is also named in his honour. As for a foreign name with more sticking power for Tonga itself, well, it seems that would emerge during the next century. It was a name not of Dutch origins however, but of British origins instead, and I suppose it's more a nickname than an actual name for the islands. I'm of course referring to the nickname of the Friendly Islands. This was a nickname given to the lands by none other than Captain James Cook of the British Navy. He's a figure we've talked about in the past and is certainly a divisive man to say the least. We've talked about him before as he named other places in this part of the world, and he certainly had a specific way of naming things, it would seem. In example, it was he who named New Zealand's Bay of Plenty and Bay of Poverty, as one of these bays offered him lots of supplies and the other did not. I'm sure you can guess which was which. James Cook gave Tonga the name of the Friendly Islands for a very similar reason. Cook famously went on 3 voyages across the southern hemisphere, ranging from 1768 all the way until 1780, though he actually died in 1779 before the final voyage was complete. While he charted and named so much during these travels, it was only on his second voyage that he actually landed in Tonga, in the latter months of 1773 to be exact. By this time, it was already known of to Europe thanks to Tasman's previous voyages, but this was the first time the British arrived there. The story goes that when he and his crew arrived on the islands, they were met with an incredibly warm reception and welcomed on the islands with food and celebrations. In his log, Cook spoke of this arrival, saying he was welcomed ashore by acclamations from an immense crowd of men and women, not one of which had so much as a stick in their hands. Cook enjoyed the reception he got on these islands so much that he returned there on his way back from New Zealand in 1774 and stayed for a few days. Once again, during this second visit, he received an equally warm welcome, with celebrations and plenty of food. It was on this second visit of his second voyage that Cook had such a wonderful time on these islands and enjoyed the reception he got from the people so much that he was compelled to give these islands a new name, that being the title of the Friendly Islands. Years later, during his third voyage, he returned to Tonga once again, and this time stayed for months, from April 1777 to August of the same year. He really enjoyed himself here, it would seem, and how friendly the people were to him. This name of the Friendly Islands for Tonga seems incredibly suitable, especially with Cook's own experiences in the lands. However, there is thought to be something of a dark irony to this name, as while yes, the native Tongans were friendly to Cook, it is thought that behind the scenes, the Tongans actually wanted to kill Cook and his crew and loot their ships. As to how these events actually played out, there seems to be somewhat conflicting reports. Some sources say that these attempts were made during his first visit, and others say his third. Perhaps they tried to do it both times. We have to ask ourselves, why were these people so kind to Cook if they were planning on killing him? Well, one idea is that when Cook arrived on his first visit, it was during a native festival on the island, and he was just invited along. Of course, in Cook's mind, these festivals were put on solely for him. As I said, some believe it was during this first visit they planned on killing him. Other sources point more towards his third, longer visit during his third voyage was when his death was being orchestrated. During this visit, he dropped anchor on the smaller island of Nomuka, whose chief at the time was called Finau. Supposedly, it was this Finau who planned to kill Cook and his men by leading them to more secluded parts of the island and killing them there. This would have been an amazing piece of history, the great James Cook being lulled into a false sense of security and friendliness by these natives, only to meet his demise at their hands. So why didn't these plots pay off? Well, it seems that in this case, the Tongans were their own worst enemies. They supposedly argued amongst themselves about how to execute the plan, and thanks to this, the timing never really worked out for them. James Cook left these islands under the impression that the Tongans were his BFFs. This information only came out years later after Cook's death, when one William Mariner, an Englishman who lived in Tonga from 1806 to 1810, found out about it and published it in his memoir on his time in the island, dubbed An Account of the Natives of the Tongan Islands in the South Pacific Ocean. I feel that the Captain Cook Society website sums up this situation best by saying, "It is perhaps one of the great ironies of history that the land which had inspired such warmth in Cook, as to bestow on it the moniker of the Friendly Islands, was also the site of a plot to kill him." Of course, a lot of this story is up in the air. We have conflicting reports as to when it happened, and the only source we have of this information is the aforementioned William Mariner, though his writings are regarded as some of the most important information on pre-Christian Tonga, and what he said is seen as gospel. Pun intended, maybe. Whatever the case is, this is a deeply fascinating story, and really gives us a glimpse into the world of James Cook, his travels, and the impact he made on the people he visited, for better and worse. Though, please do not let this tale of plot and murder and the plundering of ships shape your view on this nation. This was just one possible case from hundreds of years ago. From what I can gather, the modern nation of Tonga and its people can be pretty darn friendly, taking that title given to them by Cook and wearing it as a badge of honor. So he is hoping that these friendly islands can get a friendly helping hand in their time of need. Tonga was suggested by Denny Zavada, and thanks to their suggestion, they will now be honoured as Name Explain's patron saint of Tonga. Do you have a good idea for somewhere that's name could be covered in a Name Explain video? If so, then please consider donating on Patreon. Just $1 a month helps keep the channel running and earns you a weekly chance to suggest somewhere to be turned into a video, and you too could be a Name Explain Patreon saint. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram where I'm Name Explain YT, and also join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain, both of which will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.